Welcome back to Chasing a Murderer. Now, today we are going to talk about something. It's very important, and it's covering again the Doomsday Mom, Lori Vallow. And right now she's sitting behind bars in Arizona awaiting her trial for the death of Charles Vallow, her husband. We are learning that Lori is wanting to represent herself as her own attorney for this trial. For those of you who are not familiar with Lori Vallow, I suggest that you go back and catch some of my other videos or my series, Life Beyond the Grave. This story is very disturbing. It's confusing. It's very hard to keep up with if you do not know the people in the story. For those of us that are following this case, we know that Lori Vallow has already been to one trial. She actually will serve an eternity in jail behind bars without parole. And this is for taking the life of her autistic son, J.J. Vallow, her daughter, Tylee Ryan, and her lover's wife, Tammy Daybell. 2 of the 3 were found in the backyard of her lover's house, guys. In Idaho, Chad Daybell and his wife, Tammy Daybell, was alive at the time. How do you get away with that with people living in the house? Now, the people that were vouching for Lori would say that she would do nothing to hurt her children. And in fact, Lori would back that claim up, saying her children were safe this entire time. But that couldn't be further from the truth. That was just one of Lori's manipulative tactics. Something she seemed to have done her entire life with everyone around her is to manipulate them and to convince them into seeing things the way that she wanted them to see it. And if you follow Life Beyond the Grave, the series covering this story, you would know that we've learned that Lori likes to control, especially the men, what they wear, what they look like, and what they like. A manipulating artist who likes to paint portraits and tell you what you're looking at. Can't think for yourself. It's only what Lori wants you to see. She didn't do this just with strangers or investigators. She did this with her entire family, including her children. Today, Lori is in an Idaho jail awaiting her trial for the death of her husband, Charles Vallow. And the job for prosecutors is to prove that she and her brother Alex Cox conspired and plotted to murder Charles Vallow. Now, Alex Cox is her protective angel. Charles Vallow had planned to pick up his son, JJ, and take him to school the day he was shot. Most likely, Charles Vallow had no idea that this was going to happen since the kids would be at the house. But when he showed up, Alex Cox was there, so something must have went off in his brain at that time. But again, the kids were there. Would Lori Vallow do anything in front of the children? If you think about it, there's a chance that the kids might have saw something. And this is horrifying. Lori has a new set of prosecutors representing her in Idaho. Now, Lori has given her attorneys in the past a little bit of trouble, well, a lot of trouble. She's been a hard client to work for. We've not heard the truth of that yet, but I'm hoping in the future when all the trials are over that a lot of these attorneys that were representing Lori Vallow will be coming forward and sharing just how dramatic and difficult it was dealing with Lori. That being said, for this next trial, Lori is wanting to get rid of her attorneys that are representing her at this moment and wants to represent herself. I don't think many people that know Lori are shocked by that, but this is not a good move on her part, knowing how hard-headed and how she likes to talk and share her ideas and her side of the story. So why would Lori want to represent herself? Before we go into that, there's something I want to share. We all know that Lori Vallow's family, they're all Mormon, but we also know that her father was very anti-government, especially anti-IRS. For years, Barry has been fighting in courts over paying his taxes. Now, Lori has the experience of learning there are loopholes within the system that you most likely can manipulate to your advantage. With the fact that her father has been behind bars and represent himself as his own attorney could be one of the reasons Lori feels so confident in doing this herself. And so, yes, Barry Cox has a very long history and court dates related to his taxes. At some point during one of those trials, and I forgot exactly how this went, but Barry actually got a cease and desist from the state bar after he represented himself multiple times in those cases tied to the IRS. And I don't remember exactly how much back pay he owed them, but just the history of looking back and seeing how Barry handled a lot of his cases and then looking at Lori handle hers today, you can find a lot of things that are kind of following in her dad's footsteps. Now, we also learned that, Barry likes to use loopholes in some way. And he also, while sitting behind bars, is accused of, and I think it was in 2019, while behind bars, okay, he wrote a false document to the judge. And I wish I had time to look more into that, but I don't right now. So that was very interesting when you compare Lori to her father. So the whole family has done some things that made people, raise red flags. And I think one of those things I want to mention, I didn't plan on mentioning this, but I want to. Lori's sister, Stacy, died, supposedly because of health complications, poor health. Right before Stacy Cox died, the Cox family, the entire Cox family, planned a vacation to Hawaii, all except for Alex Cox, who Lori refers to today as her protective angel. They leave behind the very ill Stacy Cox and leave her alone. Now, according to a cousin's account of what happened with Stacy and how she died, she revealed something that was quite questionable on a podcast called True Hidden Crime.
Stacy was sickly a lot after Melanie was born, and I didn't have a whole lot of contact with her or beyond having type 1 diabetes. We didn't know, none of our family really knew exactly what her health problems were. And there was a lot of very vagueness about what the diagnosis might be. And at the time, I didn't really understand the fact that that's a pretty serious drug to be giving somebody. They have to be in a lot of pain. I didn't know that at the time. And so I thought that was odd, but I couldn't imagine what illness there would be that was associated with that. Stacy did move in with her parents while they were living here in San Antonio and seemed to be pretty sickly a lot of the time. Although I did see her from time to time, she did come to family events and she seemed to be physically fine to me. So I can't really speak to what she may have been going through at that point, but I was there when Stacy died. The circumstances were incredibly suspicious to me at the time, even still being involved in the family system. And I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail, but I will just say that I think in light of everything that's happened, we even have to go back and look at Lolly's death and say, what were the circumstances there? And we have to go back and look at everything that happened around Stacy's death. The whole family was in Hawaii. She went into DKA. She was in a coma and nobody came home. It was just me and Alex there and my parents dealing with getting Stacy into hospice care. So we knew she was going to die because she was in hospice care. And I'm thinking to myself, if it's my own child, no matter where I am in the world, if somebody tells me that they're dying, I'm going to drop everything and get on a plane and be there. And it was days and days and days before they came home. And they ultimately didn't get here before she died.
Real quick, I'm going to share what Melanie Boudreaux, Stacy's daughter, remembers, because she was around 6 years old when her mother passed away.
My mom later passed away when I was 9. Lori was the one that called and told me the news. She said, your mom's in a coma and she's probably not going to make it. And I remember that phone call, and I've always loved and trusted Lori. She's always been somebody that is just so much unconditional love on her end, no judgment, no drama, and I admire her so much. And I don't think I would have wanted to have that phone call by anybody else to have to give me that news. And I remember flying up with my dad. He took me to see my mom last time in hospice. She was out and she didn't come out of her diabetic coma. There was no, it wasn't a surprise. My mom was always very sick and on the line of, we don't know how long Stacy's gonna last. And after age 9 and my mom passed, my dad didn't let me talk or see any of that side of the family. And I didn't know why, other than he was saying all sorts of things about them.
So, according to Melanie Boudreaux, Lori Vallow was the one that informed them that her mother was about to pass away. And both of them mentioned the fact that Melanie did get to see her mother before she passed. Okay, we're going to continue listening to the True Hidden Crime interview with Megan.
So Alex lived in San Antonio at the time too, and occasionally he and I would hang out for dinner or a movie or whatever. And he came over to my house one night, and we were watching a movie, and he just sort of stopped in the middle of the movie and told me that he'd been concerned about Stacy, was worried about her, and would it be okay if the two of us went and checked on her? And so I went with him to Barry and Janice's house, and we found Stacy in the master bedroom in bed, and she was not responsive. So we called the paramedics, and they came and tried to revive her, and were not able to get her revived. So they took her to the hospital, and that's where we learned that she was in DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis, super high blood sugar. And
okay, let's pause there for a second and talk about the time that Tammy Daybell was shot at in her driveway, and how Lori had taken trips to other places like Hawaii. When Tammy died, she was in Hawaii. Who remembers where Lori was when Brandon Boudreaux was shot at? Leave it in the comments below. And so these are some of the things that are red flags. Where did Lori get these ideas that she was to establish these great alibis way away from all these incidents? When we hear Megan explain that the entire Cox family, except for Alex Cox, all had this trip to Hawaii, can't help but kind of compare the events that happened for Lori that she's behind bars for today. And like those trips to Hawaii, who was left behind? Alex Cox. Each and every time. And who do they suspect actually carried out these evil acts? Well, they believe the majority of it was carried out by Alex Cox himself. And so you can see where Megan's looking back and finding these coincidences and thinking, hey, was there more to this? And I think everyone that followed this case has always suspected that Stacy's death might have had more to it. And possibly, people believe there's a chance that Alex Cox might have also played a role in that event. What do you guys think? Do you believe that Lori, her family, or Alex Cox, or all the above had something to do with Stacy's passing? So that gives you an idea of just how complex, confusing, manipulative, everyone involved with this case can be. Megan says that she left out a few things, and that was out of respect for her cousin, Melanie, and her father. So, is there more to the story? Now, let's catch up to what's going on right now with Lori Vallow. So, right now, we know that Lori Vallow is behind bars in Arizona. She is waiting to stand trial for the murder of her husband at the time, Charles Vallow. And she has made a few court appearances that have your eyes wide open, going, this is crazy. How is it that she can act like nothing ever happened when her children are no longer here on this earth? She has been quite confident, narcissistic, flirtatious, sarcastic. And she seems to be acting like she's in high school, walking into a room of people that she wants to impress. So it seems that she's trying to fire her attorneys and that she wants to represent herself. And there's a quote out there, and I hope I don't say it backwards, that a person that represents themselves has a fool for a client. For someone like Lori Vallow, this isn't the case. She enjoys every moment of everything that's going on, the majority of it, because everywhere she goes, it's a challenge for her to make people cater to her and to become the people she would like for them to become. As I mentioned, she will offer her assistance in any way possible, seem helpful and giving. She will also put together and organize little gatherings or little parties the best she can from behind bars. When she represents herself as an attorney, what do we expect to see? Well, you can expect to see a narcissist at work, a manipulator finding every little loophole she can in order to create chaos or distraction during trial. But first, she's got to be deemed competent. And what this means is whether or not she's competent enough for several reasons to represent herself in trial and to understand what's going on around her. Like her father, she plans on blaming everyone and using loopholes to the best of her knowledge to get her way. Not only this, she has a platform like she's never had before. There are thousands or even millions of people following this case. During Lori's trial for JJ, Tylee, and Tammy, we heard her make a statement. And in that statement, she exposed a new, shocking story she claimed happened to her after giving birth to one of her children, that she experienced a near-death experience. She never apologized. She never showed any type of remorse. Instead, she used it as a way to preach, and she was using it like a little fireside that she was used to attending at her church. So right now, we don't know if Lori and Chad have communications. So will this be a way in order to communicate with Chad? Will they continue to try to write this book that she's been wanting to write? So for Lori, being behind bars is not necessarily a punishment, but just a change in agency, a change in a direction for her mission. And that is exactly how she sees it. We've heard multiple times how she envies the story of Job. And even she has mentioned to her son several times how she felt that she was being tested as Job. She would have to be able to lose everything that meant the most to her and do it without being affected or it affecting her mission. Lori truly believes that Satan has been after her the entire time. And even family members like her sister Summer Shiflett have hinted that they believe that Lori believes that she's being tested by God and challenged by Satan himself. So what can the court expect if Lori gets her way and can represent herself? Well, they can expect a lot of nonsense. And also, she will find a way to mess with every witness that has testified against her. This will give her a chance to intimidate them, something she enjoys doing. Will she come out and say, "Oh, Melanie Gibb, you know that you had a bigger part to play"? No, but she will go way out of her way to point out that she isn't as perfect as she tries to make herself out to be. I haven't had time to check into library time at the jail Lori is at. So, will this representing herself for the Charles Vallow trial open up doors and give her more open space in order to maybe visit the library, spend more time on the computer, make more phone calls? What about talking to witnesses? Will this open up the door for her to have more communication with Chad Daybell? We learned in a phone call to her son, Colby Ryan, just recently that she wanted to tell Colby more than she did. But her attorneys refused to help her do so and advised her to keep her mouth shut. So there's no telling what these attorneys have been through trying to represent Lori. I have mentioned it's my opinion that I believe Lori did try to counsel with her attorneys in order to take steps that was petty that most attorneys would not take. And Lori will be obsessed with this trial if she represents herself. So how far she's going to take it, well, we'll talk more about it on another video, because I believe if she represents herself, there's going to be a lot going on. But first, they have to deal with a motion to withdraw Rule 11 request. What is Rule 11? Well, the Forensic Services Division evaluates defendants for competency. So this is in criminal cases, and we know that the February 2025 trial date has been vacated because of this request. Lori Vallow's new attorneys, Pamela Hicks, said that she really felt there was no need to be in Rule 11. She believed that her defendant needs to move forward with her trial and represent herself. However, the prosecution says that they already decided that a Rule 11 process was necessary when the initial motion was granted October 21st of 2024. So basically, this is the prosecution crossing their T's and dotting their I's, making sure there's no room for appeals or mistrial. And the state asked for a mental evaluation. We dealt with Lori's competency during her Idaho trial. We also learned that she did get a diagnosis of a personality disorder as well as hyper-religiosity. That's a new one from me. In other words, basically religious extremism. Now, according to the information we learned, medication was key to getting Lori Vallow competent, which took nearly a year. According to Fox 10 News, Justin Lum, there are reports from 2 court-appointed doctors that are expected to be received as soon as November 7th. Also, the judge will keep Lori Vallow's Rule 11 hearing on the schedule for November 14th. So here we go with all these dates, and then afterwards a status conference is set for November 20th. So share your thoughts, guys, below. Tell me what you think. Subscribe, like, share. It's been crazy busy, so I'm really struggling to get these out. I love you guys, and I miss you guys so much. I wanted to talk to you guys about so many things, especially about Colby Ryan's video that he put out where he talked to his mom. Maybe some of you were shocked. I was not, because that's the Lori Vallow I expect. But for Colby Ryan, he must have been shocked. Let's face it, it's hard to believe when you love your mother and you believe that she's been there her whole entire life to take care and love you, and then see this side coming out. He doesn't realize, and I don't know if he ever will, that she has always been this person. So maybe we can get around to talking about that one day soon, especially the fact of how she tried to blame her own daughter for what happened to JJ Vallow. I think what got to me the most is how she puts into his head, you know me. You know how much I love you, and I would do anything to take up for you guys. I would take the fall for Tylee. But that's not what she's doing. It's a bit noisy around here, so I love you guys. Talk to you soon.